The space station Aurora's crown floated quietly in the dark of space. It was a big metal circle with lights that twinkled like stars. Ships from many different planets came here to talk about peace and trade. Today was special. The queen of the Vothrak people was coming to visit. Captain Lee Taman stood with his security team in the docking bay. He wore his blue uniform with pride. His face was serious as he checked his weapon one more time. The other guards stood straight and ready. They all knew this meeting was important. If it went well, humans and Vothrak might stop fighting each. Other Taman had been a soldier for many years. He had seen war and death. His blue eyes had watched friends die in battle. His hands were strong from holding weapons and helping wounded soldiers. At 35 years old, he was tired of fighting. He wanted peace as much as anyone. The big doors of the docking bay opened with a loud hiss. Cold air rushed in from space. A beautiful ship came through the opening. It was silver and gold with strange markings on its sides. The ship was bigger than any human ship Taman had ever seen. Commander Park Ji-won stood next to Taman. She was his best friend and second in command. Her dark hair was pulled back tight and her uniform was perfect. She whispered to him, "Remember, don't look directly at the Queen. It's rude in their culture." The ship landed with a soft thud. Steam came out from under it as the engines cooled down. Everyone in the docking bay was quiet. They could hear their own hearts beating. This was history happening right in front of them. A ramp came down from the ship. First came the Vothrak guards. They were tall and covered in scales that looked like green armor. Their eyes were yellow and they moved like cats. They carried weapons that glowed with blue light. The guards looked around the room, checking for danger. Then she appeared. Queen Velandra walked down the ramp like she owned the universe. She was taller than any human, maybe 7 feet tall. Her scales were silver and green, and they caught the light as she moved. She wore a long robe that seemed to flow like water. On her head was a crown made of metal and jewels that sparkled. But it was her face that made everyone stop breathing. Even though she looked like a giant lizard, there was something beautiful about her. Her yellow eyes were smart and proud. She held her head high like she had never been afraid of anything. The Queen's eyes moved across the line of human guards. She looked at each face for just a moment. Her expression was calm and royal. Nothing seemed to surprise her or make her worry. Then, she saw Taman. The Queen stopped walking. Her yellow eyes went wide with shock. Her mouth opened a little bit. For a few seconds, she just stood there staring at him. The proud look on her face melted away. She looked like she had seen a ghost. Taman felt her stare but kept looking straight, ahead like a good soldier should. But something felt strange. The air in the room seemed to change. He could feel power coming from the alien queen, but also something else. Sadness, maybe, or surprise. The other Vothrak in her group noticed that their queen had stopped. They looked worried. One of them, an older female with darker scales, moved closer to the queen. She whispered something in their strange language that sounded like wind through metal. The queen blinked her big yellow eyes. She seemed to remember where she was. Her royal mask came back on her face. She started walking again, but slower than before. Her eyes kept moving back to look at Taman. Dr. Kim Sora, the human scientist who studied aliens, stepped forward. She bowed the way the Vothrak liked. "Welcome to Aurora's crown, Your Majesty. We are honored by your visit." The Queen nodded, but her mind seemed far away. When she spoke, her voice was deep and musical. The translator box on her belt changed. Her words to English. "Thank you for having us. We hope this meeting will bring good things for both our peoples." But even as she said the right words, her eyes kept going back to Taman. She studied his face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. His strong jaw, his blue eyes, the way he stood with his shoulders back. Everything about him seemed to fascinate her. The welcome ceremony began. Humans and Vothrak gave speeches about peace and friendship. They exchanged gifts and promises. But through it all, Queen Velandra kept stealing looks at the human guard who looked so familiar. Taman tried to focus on his job. He watched for threats and kept his face blank like a professional soldier. But he could not ignore the feeling that the alien queen was watching him. Her stare made his skin feel warm. He had never felt anything like it. When the ceremony ended, everyone started to leave for the meeting rooms. The Queen was walking with the human leaders when she did something that shocked everyone. She stopped and turned back to look at the security team. "I have a request," she said. Her voice was strong, but there was something else in it, something that sounded almost desperate. "I would like Captain—" She looked at his name badge. "Captain Lee Taman to be my personal security liaison during my stay here." The human leaders looked surprised. Commander Park Ji-won's eyes went wide. Dr. Kim Sora frowned like she was trying to understand what was happening. This was not normal. Queens did not usually pick their own guards, especially from another species, but the Queen was waiting for an answer. Her yellow eyes were fixed on Taman again. This time he looked back at her. For just a moment, their eyes met across the space between species and worlds. Something passed between them that neither of them understood. General Nam Hyun-woo, the human military leader, cleared his throat. "If that is what your majesty wishes, we will be happy to arrange it." The Queen nodded once. "Good. We will begin tomorrow." Then she turned and walked away with her group, her robe flowing behind her like water. Taman watched her go. His heart was beating fast, and he did not know why. Something had just changed in his life, but he did not know what it was yet. Commander. Park Ji-won moved close to him. "What was that about?" she whispered. Taman shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we're about to find out." The next morning came too soon for Taman. He had not slept well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the Queen's yellow stare. He got dressed in his best uniform and checked his weapon 3 times. His hands were shaking a little, which made him angry at himself. He was a professional soldier. He should not be nervous about guarding one alien, even if she was a queen. Commander Park Ji-won found him in the security office. She sat down across from his desk and looked at him with worried eyes. "Are you sure about this, Taman? Something strange happened yesterday. Queens don't just pick random guards." Taman looked up from his reports. "I know it's strange, but orders are orders. Maybe she just wants someone who looks strong to protect her." Ji-won shook her head. "No, it was more than that. I saw how she looked at you, like she knew you from somewhere." Before Taman could answer, Dr. Kim Sora came into the office. She was carrying a tablet computer and looked excited about something. "Taman, I'm so glad you're here. I need to tell you something important before you start your new job." She sat down and opened her tablet. Pictures of Vothrak appeared on the screen. "I spent all night reading about their culture. Did you know that Vothrak can live for more than 200 years? And their queens only rule if they're very special? Queen Velandra has been ruling for 20 years, but she's still young for her people." Taman frowned. "Why is that important?" Dr. Sora's eyes were bright with discovery. "Because 20 years ago, something terrible happened to her. She was just a princess then, not a queen yet. She was in love with a prince named Kethvar, but he was killed by his own people because he wanted peace with aliens like us." The room went quiet. Ji-won leaned forward. "What happened to him?" "He was assassinated. Shot down by Vothrak, who thought he was a traitor for wanting to be friends with other species. The princess became queen after that, but she never married anyone else. Some people say she's still sad about losing him." Taman felt something cold in his stomach. "What did this prince look like?" Dr. Sora looked at her tablet again. "That's the strange part. I could only find one old picture of him, but Taman—" She turned the tablet so he could see the screen. The picture was old and not very clear, but Taman could see enough. The dead prince had the same strong jaw he did, the same way of standing with straight shoulders. Even though the prince was a different species, there was something in his face that looked familiar. "Oh," Ji-won whispered. "Now I understand." Before anyone could say more, Taman's communicator beeped. A voice told him to report to the Queen's rooms right away. He stood up and put on his weapon belt. His friends watched him with worried faces. "Be careful," Dr. Sora said. "Grief can make people do strange things." Taman walked through the station to the VIP section. The halls were quieter here and the lights were softer. Vothrak guards stood outside the Queen's door. They looked at him with their yellow eyes, but let him pass. Inside, the Queen's rooms had been changed to look like a place from her home world. The walls were covered with silver cloth that moved like water. Strange plants grew in pots that glowed with soft light. The air smelled like flowers he had never smelled before. Queen Velandra stood by a big window looking out at the stars. She had changed from her royal robes into something simpler, but she still looked like the most important person in the galaxy. When she heard him come in, she turned around. "Captain Taman," she said. Her translator made her voice sound like music. "Thank you for coming." He bowed the way Dr. Sora had taught him. "Your Majesty, how can I serve you?" The Queen walked closer to him. Up close, he could see that her scales were not just green and silver. They had tiny patterns like snowflakes. Her eyes were not just yellow either. They had flecks of gold that caught the light. "Tell me about yourself," she said. "Where do you come from?" This was not what Taman had expected. He thought she would want to talk about security or schedules. "I come from Earth, Your Majesty, from a city called Sol. I've been a soldier for 15 years. Do you have family?" "Not anymore. My parents died in the war with the Kreen 5 years ago." "I have no brothers or sisters." Something sad flickered in the Queen's eyes. "I am sorry for your loss. War takes so much from us." They stood in silence for a moment. Then the Queen did something that shocked him. She reached out and almost touched his face, but stopped just before her scaled finger reached his skin. "You look like someone I knew once," she whispered. Taman's heart started beating fast. "Your Majesty?" The Queen pulled her hand back and turned away. "Forgive me. That was not proper." She walked back to the window. "Tell me, Captain, what do you think of peace?" "I think it's worth fighting for," Taman said without thinking. The Queen looked back at him with surprise. "Fighting for peace? Is that not a contradiction?" "No, Your Majesty. Sometimes you have to fight the people who want war so that everyone else can have peace. Sometimes you have to be strong so that others can be safe." That is what he used to say. The words came out so soft that Taman almost didn't hear them. "Your Majesty?" The Queen shook her head. "Nothing. Just memories of someone who died a long time ago." They spent the next hour talking about security plans for her visit. But even as they discussed schedules and routes, Taman could feel something else happening. The Queen kept looking at him when she thought he wasn't watching. She asked him questions about his life, his thoughts, his dreams. When their meeting ended, the Queen walked him to the door. "Captain Taman, may I ask you something? Personal?" "Of course, Your Majesty. Do you believe that some people are meant to meet each other, even across great distances and differences?" Taman thought about it. "I think the universe is very big and very strange. Maybe nothing happens by accident." The Queen smiled for the first time since he had met her. It changed her whole face. "Perhaps you are right." As Taman walked back through the station, his head was full of questions. Why did the Queen care so much about him? Why did he feel so comfortable talking to her? And why did it feel like he had known her for much longer than one day? He found Jiwan waiting for him in his quarters. "How did it go?" "Strange," Taman said. He sat down heavily in his chair. "She keeps staring at me like she's trying to remember something. And she asked me all these personal questions." "What kind of questions?" "About my family, my beliefs, what I think about peace." Taman rubbed his face with his hands. "Jiwan, I think Dr. Sora was right. I think the Queen sees her dead prince when she looks at me." Jiwan was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "What are you going to do?" "My job," Taman said. "I'm going to protect her and help her make peace with our people. Whatever else is happening, that's what matters most." But even as he said it, Taman knew that something had changed in him, too. The alien queen, with her sad eyes and royal sadness, had touched something in his heart. He just hoped he was strong enough to handle whatever came next. 3 days passed like a dream. Every morning, Taman reported to Queen Velandra's rooms. Every day, they talked about security and plans for her meetings. But they also talked about other things. She asked him about human music, and he asked her about Vothrak art. She told him stories about her home world, with its silver trees and purple skies. He told her about Earth's blue oceans and white clouds. The Queen was not what Taman had expected. Under her royal mask, she was curious and kind. She laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones. When she smiled, her whole face changed and became beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with being human or alien. But Taman could see the sadness in her, too. Sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking, her eyes would get far away and sad. She would touch a small pendant that hung around her neck. It was made of blue crystal and seemed very old. On the fourth day, everything changed. Taman was walking the Queen to another boring meeting with diplomats when the attack happened. They were in a quiet hallway when three figures in black masks jumped out from behind a corner. They were not human or Vothrak. They were Kreen, the insect-like aliens who hated everyone who was not like them. "Die, peace lovers," one of them screamed. They raised weapons that shot red beams of energy. Training took over. Taman pushed the Queen behind a wall just as the red beams burned the air where she had been standing. He pulled out his weapon and fired back. Blue energy bolts flew down the hallway. "Stay down!" he yelled to the Queen. But when he looked back, she was not hiding. She had pulled out her own weapon, a curved blade that glowed with silver light. The fight was fast and deadly. The Kreen were good fighters, but they had not expected the Queen to fight back. And they had not expected a human guard who moved like a dancer and shot like an artist. Taman rolled behind a pillar as red energy burned the wall next to his head. He came up shooting and hit one of the attackers in the chest. The Kreen fell down and did not get up again. The Queen moved like flowing water. Her silver blade cut through the air and blocked energy beams like they were nothing. She spun and struck, and another attacker fell down bleeding green blood. The last Kreen was the biggest and meanest. He charged at Taman with a knife that sparked with electricity. Taman's weapon was empty. He had no time to reload. The alien was going to kill him. Then Queen Velandra appeared like a silver shadow. Her blade went through the attacker's heart. The Kreen looked surprised for just a moment, then fell down dead. The hallway went quiet, except for the sound of their heavy breathing. Taman looked at the Queen with new respect. She was not just a royal person who needed protection. She was a warrior. "Are you hurt?" she asked him. Her voice was worried. "No, Your Majesty." "Are you?" She shook her head. Then she did something that surprised him. She reached out and touched his arm where his shirt was torn. "You saved my life." "You saved mine, too." They looked at each other for a long moment. The danger had brought them closer together somehow. Taman could see something new in her yellow eyes, something warm and grateful and maybe something more. Security guards came running down the hall. Commander Jiwan was with them, looking scared and angry. "What happened? We heard shooting." "Kreen assassins," Taman reported. 3 of them, all dead. Dr. Kim Sora arrived with medical equipment. She checked both Taman and the Queen for injuries. "You're both lucky. Those energy weapons could have killed you." Agent Yoon Seung-ho appeared like a ghost. He was the station's spy and investigator. He looked at the dead attackers with cold eyes. "This was not random. Someone sent them here to kill the Queen and break up the peace talks." Later that evening, Taman found the Queen in her garden room. She was sitting by her glowing plants, very still and quiet. The blue crystal pendant was in her hands, and she was staring at it. "Your Majesty, are you all right?" She looked up at him with tired eyes. "I have been thinking about today, about how quickly life can end, how one moment you can be talking about peace, and the next moment you can be fighting for your life." Taman sat down near her, but not too close. "Yes, war taught me that nothing is promised. Every day is a gift. In my culture, when someone saves your life, they become part of your family, not by blood, but by choice and honor." She held up the blue crystal. "This belonged to someone very dear to me, someone who died because he wanted peace between different species. The prince that Dr. Sora told me about." The Queen's eyes went wide with surprise. "You know about Kethvar?" "Dr. Sora researches everything. She told me he was killed for wanting peace with aliens like us." Queen Velandra was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was very soft. "He was not just any prince. He was my mate, my heart, my other half." Taman felt something twist in his stomach. "I'm sorry for your loss, Your Majesty. For 20 years, I have been alone. I became queen. But I never let anyone close to my heart again. It hurt too much. She looked at him with those golden flecked eyes. Until now. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge that neither of them knew how to cross. Taemin's heart was beating so fast he was sure she could hear it. Your Majesty, Please, she said. When we are alone like this, call me Velandra. I am tired of being just a queen. Velandra. Her name felt strange and wonderful on his tongue. I don't understand what's happening between us. Neither do I. She stood up and walked to him. This time she did touch his face. Her scaled hand was warm and gentle. But when I look at you, I see him. Not just the way you look, but the way you think. The way you care about others more than yourself. The way you fight for peace instead of just for victory. Taemin closed his eyes and leaned into her touch. It felt right in a way that should have been impossible. This is crazy. We're different. Species. Different worlds. Yes, she whispered. It is crazy. But today you were willing to die to protect me. And I realized that I would die to protect you too. They stood there in the soft light of the alien plants, human and Vothrak, soldier and queen, two hearts that had found each other across the vast darkness of space. But outside in the corridor, Lord Theximar, a powerful Vothrak noble, was talking, quietly with his followers. He had been watching the queen's behavior. He had seen how she looked at the human guard, and he was making plans that would change everything. The next morning brought bad news. Taemin was in the security office when Agent Yoon Sung-ho burst in with a grim face. He threw a tablet on the desk with angry force. We have a problem. A big one. Taemin looked at the screen. It showed pictures of him and Queen Velandra from the day before. In one picture, they were standing close together in her garden room. In another, her hand was touching his face. The pictures were taken from a hidden angle, like someone had been spying on them. Where did these come from? Taemin asked. But his heart already knew the answer would be bad. They're all over the Vothrak communication network. Someone took them yesterday and sent them to every important Vothrak in the galaxy. Sung-ho's face was dark with anger. The message says your queen has been seduced by inferior alien creatures and is not fit to rule anymore. Commander Ji-won came into the office and saw the pictures. Oh no, Taemin, this is a disaster. Before Taemin could answer, Dr. Kim Sora ran in. She looked excited and scared at the same time. I have news. Good news and bad news. Which do you want first? Just tell us everything, Taemin said. His whole world was falling apart. He needed facts, not games. Dr. Sora opened her own tablet. I've been working with Dr. Lee Dongwook from Earth. He's a genetics expert. We've been studying DNA samples from humans and Vothrak who look similar. She showed them charts full of numbers and symbols that Taemin did not understand. What we found is amazing. Thousands of years ago, both humans and Vothrak were visited by the same ancient race. They called themselves the Architects. These architects changed the DNA of both species. What does that mean? Ji-won asked. It means we're related. Not closely, but enough that some humans and some Vothrak can look very similar. It's like we're distant cousins. Dr. Sora's eyes were bright with discovery. The architects wanted to create species that could understand each other, that could work together. Taemin felt something click in his mind. That's why the Queen and that's why we connected so easily. Exactly. Your DNA and hers are both from the purest architect bloodlines. That's why you look like her dead prince. That's why you can understand each other so well. Dr. Sora looked sad suddenly. But that's also the bad news. The Vothrak nobles who hate the Queen are using this connection to destroy her. Agent Seung-ho pointed at the tablet with the spy pictures. Lord Theximar has been working against the Queen for years. He thinks she's too soft, too willing to make peace with other species. These pictures are the perfect weapon for him. What will happen to her? Taemin asked. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. If enough nobles turn against her, she could lose her crown, or worse. Seung-ho looked grim. Some of the old Vothrak still believe in death for dishonor. Taemin stood up so fast his chair fell over. I have to see her. I have to warn her. But when he got to the Queen's rooms, Vothrak guards blocked his way. These were not the same guards as before. These had the dark red scales of Lord Theximar's personal army. "The Queen is not receiving visitors," one of them said in broken English. "I'm her security liaison. I have a right to see her." "Not anymore, human. Lord Theximar has taken charge of the Queen's security." Taman felt anger burning in his chest, but he was one human against a dozen armed Vothrak. He had to be smart, not just brave. He went back to find his friends. They were all gathered in Dr. Sora's lab, looking at more charts and pictures. Elder Zorthak, the oldest Vothrak on the station, was with them. His scales were so old they had turned white, and his eyes were clouded with age. "Captain Tamin," the elder said in perfect English, "I have been waiting to meet you." "Elder, what's happening to the Queen?" The old Vothrak moved slowly to a chair. "Lord Theximar has called for a judgment trial. He says the Queen has been corrupted by alien influence and must be removed from power." "Can he do that?" "If enough nobles agree with him, yes." Elder Zorthak looked very tired. "But there is something Lord Theximar does not know. Something I have kept secret for many years." The elder pulled out an ancient book. Its pages were made of metal and covered with symbols that glowed softly. "This is the Chronicle of Architects. It tells the true history of our people." He opened the book carefully. "Queen Velandra's bloodline is the purest connection to the architects that still exists. Her ability to bond with other architect-touched species like humans is not a weakness. It is the greatest gift our people have." Dr. Sora leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "The architects left instructions. They said that one day their children would find each other again across the stars. When that happened, it would be time for all the species they touched to unite as one family." The elder looked at Taman with his clouded eyes. "You and the Queen are the first sign that this time has come. But the other nobles don't know this? Lord Theximar and his followers have forgotten the old wisdom. They think strength comes from being separate and alone. They do not understand that true strength comes from unity." Commander Jiwan had been quiet, but now she spoke up. "What can we do to help the Queen?" Elder Zorthak closed the ancient book. "The judgment trial will be tomorrow. If I can present this evidence, if I can show the nobles the truth about the architects, maybe they will understand." "And if they don't?" Taman asked. The elder was quiet for a long moment. "Then the Queen will be stripped of her crown and exiled, or executed." That night Taman could not sleep. He walked the halls of the station, thinking about everything that had happened. A week ago he had been a simple soldier. Now he was part of something bigger than himself. Something that could change the future of two species. He found himself outside the Queen's rooms again. The guards were still there, but they were different ones now. These had the silver scales of the Queen's personal guard. One of them recognized him. "Captain Taman, the Queen has been asking for you." They let him pass. Inside, Queen Velandra was standing by her window again, looking out at the stars. But this time she looked smaller somehow, less like a queen and more like a woman who was scared and alone. "Taman," she said without turning around, "I wondered if you would come. I tried to come earlier, but Theximar's guards wouldn't let me pass." She turned around and he saw that she had been crying. Vothrak tears were like liquid silver, and they had left shining tracks on her scaled cheeks. "I am sorry," she whispered. "This is all my fault. I should never have let myself care for you. Now both of our peoples will suffer because I was selfish." Taman crossed the room and took her hands in his. They were shaking. "No, don't say that. What we have is not selfish. It's hope." "Hope?" She laughed, but it sounded like crying. "Tomorrow they will take my crown. They will say, I am not fit to rule because I fell in love with an alien. Then we'll prove them wrong. Elder Zorthak has evidence. The Chronicle of Architects. He can show them that what happened between us is exactly what was supposed to happen." The Queen looked at him with surprise. "You would risk everything for me? For us?" "Yes," Taman said without hesitation. "Because some things are worth fighting for. And love that can bridge the gap between species is definitely one of them." She smiled then, the first real smile he had seen from her since the pictures came. Out. Then we will face tomorrow together. But neither of them knew that in the shadows, Lord Thexamar was making his final plans. Plans that would test their love and their courage in ways they could never imagine. The judgment trial began at dawn. The main conference room had been turned into a Vothrak court. Tall banners hung from the ceiling in the royal colors of silver and green. Dozens of Vothrak nobles sat in a circle, their scales glittering in the artificial light. They looked like a rainbow of reptiles, some green, some blue, some red, like Lord Thexamar. Queen Velandra sat in the center of the circle. She wore her royal robes, but no crown. In Vothrak law, an accused queen could not wear the crown until her innocence was proven. She sat straight and proud, but Taman could see the fear in her yellow eyes. Lord Thexamar stood up to speak. His red scales made him look like he was made of blood and fire. His voice was deep and angry. Fellow nobles, we are here because our queen has forgotten who she is. She has been corrupted by alien influence. She has brought shame on our proud race. He held up the spy pictures of Taman and the queen. Look at this proof. She touches this human like he is her mate. She forgets her duty to our people for the sake of alien desires. Many of the nobles hissed their agreement. The sound was like steam escaping from a broken pipe. Taman, who was watching from the gallery with his human friends, felt his heart sink. The nobles looked angry and disgusted. Elder Zorthak stood up slowly. His white scales made him look like a ghost among the colorful nobles. Lord Thexamar, you speak of shame and corruption, but you do not speak of truth. What truth, old one? The truth that our queen has betrayed us? Elder Zorthak walked to the center of the circle. He carried the ancient chronicle of architects. The truth about who we really are. The truth about why we are here. He opened the metal book. The symbols on its pages began to glow brighter. Long ago, before our great-great-grandparents were born, we were visited by the architects. They were beings of great power and wisdom. They saw potential in our species and in others across the galaxy. The room grew quiet. Even the angry nobles wanted to hear about their ancient history. The architects changed us. They put pieces of themselves into our DNA. But they did not do this to make us alone and separate. They did it to make us capable of finding our brothers and sisters among the stars. Elder Zorthak looked directly at Taman. The humans were